On that note, let's now invite Brian Gallant, former New Brunswick Premier. Good afternoon and thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me and happy Canada Day.
Happy Canada Day to you as well. Now, the federal government has removed all federal barriers to interprovincial trade. The Prime Minister keeping up with this promise. But actually speaking, what does this truly mean for trade in the country?
It's a good thing in the sense that a lot of these would be seen as small irritants that can have overall a ripple effect and have, with the amalgamation of them all, a positive impact on the economy if you can either get rid of them, eliminate them, or at the same time you find ways to harmonize them across the country. So I think this is going to be seen as a positive thing. I believe that we're going to see the provinces as well follow suit. As you mentioned, they have some exemptions as well. They have some work to do to harmonize regulations to make it easier to have trade within the country. So I suspect there's going to be pressure, and I think you're also going to see premiers and provinces want to sort of jump in on this train because this is a popular thing at the moment, given the U.S. trade conflict that we sort of get our so-called act together, as many would say. So I think we've seen a lot of movement in the last few weeks and months. I was premier back in 2017 and signed the original CFTA. And I can tell you that back then there was a lot of support for this to happen. But maybe now with, again, the U.S. trade conflict, there's an impetus and things are really moving quite quickly.
You know, I'm glad you bring that up, Brian, because the fact is these discussions have been on for a long time, but we're only seeing the needle move so fast now because of what's happening south of the border. So can you talk to us, since you've been the premier, about the challenges that provinces continue to face in breaking all barriers down? While, of course, there has been a lot of movement, we know how provinces between each other are signing agreements, but there are challenges. Talk to us about those.
Yeah, so some of it is irritants. They're just things that probably don't make all that much sense. I'll give you an example that I remember from back then. It was sort of first aid kits. You'd have different regulations in all the provinces of what a first aid kit needed to have. Well, at the end of the day, I think as Canadians, we could all most likely agree on what is needed in that type of kit for it to feel like it is sort of complete and holistic. So that's one example. Then you have some mobility issues that we have with our labor, and that some will say is better for some of the smaller provinces, that they don't necessarily want people to leave their province every time that there's an opportunity in a larger province. But I would certainly argue that I don't want someone to stay in, say, New Brunswick, a smaller province, just because they can't get a certification in another one to pursue a job and career and maybe career advancement, and hopefully with the idea that they want to come back to the region one day after they gain that experience. And I also think it puts a little pressure, good pressure, on people to pay more, do a better job of recruiting and retaining workers. And then, of course, there is obviously, as you are showing on the screen, there's some transportation on the logistical side, regulations that are probably, some of them are irritants, some of them maybe make some sense, but we got to find a way to have a compromise so we can get products across the country as smoothly as possible. This was always something premiers cared about. Again, way back in 2017, when the premiers around the table at that time signed the CFTA, we all wanted to see this move forward. But sometimes it sort of goes on the back burner. And I think the impetus of the U.S. trade conflict has made this something that we all want to act on.
Right. Brian, briefly, if you could, there is this figure that's doing the rounds that once all barriers are down, it could add to the GDP, to the economy, to the tune of $200 billion. Do you agree with that figure?
Yeah, so I'm not an economist, but I certainly have looked into it because this has been something that has been discussed as in the discourse, the political discourse, and as a country for quite some time. And look, I think those are the high-end sort of estimations, and some would say that that's their estimates, that's their sort of guesstimations in some cases. But to be clear, that would be with, I think, depending on the study, but that would be with all of the barriers gone. So what we just had right now are the federal exemptions, the federal sort of internal trade barriers, as they're often called. Those are eliminated, but there are several that are with the provinces. So we just also have to say that there are different layers to it. But I would be hard-pressed to be convinced it would go right up to that echelon. I'm not an economist, of course, but I do think it will have a positive impact. And at this stage, getting products across the country from coast to coast to coast makes a lot of sense. I don't think it always made sense, but it certainly does given the climate we're in right now.
Brian Gallant, former New Brunswick Premier, thank you for joining us. And once again, happy Canada Day to you.
To you as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.